What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. And yeah, got a little bit of a different recording situation going on here, and I am going to apologize for whatever green screeny things my green screen is going to do here. It's been acting up trying to set up this video, so hopefully it behaves, but I will apologize for that right off the bat. You see, I have broken the whiteboard back out, wrote some things down on it, uploaded it to the green screen, and for all of you lovely people to see right there, we'll give you a look at the full board here. While I tell you what this video is about, in case you didn't read the title, hey, this video is about going over the teams that reside inside the College Football Playoff Committee's initial top 14, kind of the range that people feel like, yeah, these are still teams that can make the College Football Playoff, because pretty much any team 14 and below has 2 losses, although the team at 14 that we're going to talk about still has a shot to get into the College Football Playoff. I have listed them according to the All-State Playoff Predictors' chances to make the College Football Playoff. That comes out from ESPN. So we're going to dive on into this one. You guys know I got to say before the video starts, though, thank you for all the support the channel has seen as of late. And if you want to continue to help show your support, hey, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you know when videos get uploaded. Of course, watching this video is a huge way to help support me as well. And you can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, really any way you help interact with the channel helps support me, and I greatly appreciate all of it and any of it that you guys are able to give me. So thank you for all of the support. Let's talk about the College Football Playoff. Let's talk about the College Football Playoff contenders, shall we? So you will notice that there are some asterisks. That word is hard to say. You will notice that there are these little signs here by certain teams, and what that means is if there's an asterisk by a team, it just means that as of right now, they currently reside within the College Football Playoff Committee's top 25. We're going to go through every team here, talk about some wins that they already have, talk about some wins that they could get, talk about some potential trap games, pretty much what they need to do to get into the College Football Playoff. So let's start at the top, shall we? Let's start out with what the committee dubs as the #1 team in the nation, at least as of right now, and that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. A 79% chance to reach the College Football Playoff, and according to ESPN's Football Power Index, a 37.2% chance to win the remainder of their games. Let's look at the remainder of their games, shall we? Week 10, you have to go on the road and play the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Now, do not sleep on this Rutgers team. This is a Rutgers team that can beat you, and it is going to be more competitive than I think a lot of Buckeye fans are going to think. They're a very, very sound defensive team. Their offense, not quite there. But if this Buckeye offense is going to struggle and it's going to make mistakes and Rutgers offense is able to capitalize, that defense is good enough, especially with the way that Ohio State's offense hasn't really gelled fully together quite yet. This is a Rutgers team that can pull off a stunner. Do I think it is going to happen? No, I really do not think it is going to happen, but it is noteworthy to know that Rutgers is capable of pulling out this win. Michigan State is a dumpster fire. Don't think they're going to pose much of a challenge. Then you have Minnesota, and then, of course, it's the big one against the Michigan Wolverines. Again, there are a lot of things on this board that are going to kind of sort itself out, right? Per se, and this is one of those games right here. Ohio State and Michigan are just one of the many games on this board that, hey, are going to have some impact, not only by the team that's playing the game, but by other teams on this board as well. So that, obviously, a huge, huge game. That game's going to be hyped up all season long. Could potentially be #1 versus #2. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of the nation falls on that, though. Currently, right now, it's #1 versus #3, and yeah, so that one going to be a very, very big game right there. So let's move on to #2 now. The Florida State Seminoles currently sit here at 2nd place. They have a 68% chance to make the College Football Playoff, according to the All-State Playoff Predictor. Apologies for all the lag, too, as well. Not sure what's going on there. And according to ESPN's Football Power Index, they have a 52.7% chance to win out. And it is really not hard to see why at all. You'll notice there is not an asterisk here by any, there is not an asterisk here by any team that Florida State plays. Now, could Miami get back into the top 25? Yes. Could Florida get back into the top 25? Yes. But this really is not a schedule that a lot of Florida State fans are going, oh, we got to watch out for so-and-so. This is a Florida State fan base that right now is expecting to win the remainder of their games. You have to go on the road at Pitt there in Week 10. You get the Miami Hurricanes at home. You also get a home game against North Alabama, your FCS opponent, a basically pick-me-up win before you go on the road in the swamp to play the Florida Gators, which is going to be a very, very challenging game. But all Florida State needs to do, guys, is they need to win out and win the ACC. And they're probably in the college football playoff. That's why they have such a high likelihood right here of 68%. It's interesting to note, though, Ohio State with the 79%. And with the committee putting them at number 1 this past week, and with the resume that Ohio State already has, it may not matter what happens in this game right here. Ohio State, especially with a number that high, especially with the way the College Football Playoff Committee is viewing that team right now, that game very well could mean, well, as long as Ohio State keeps it close, keeps it competitive, they're going to find a way to get into the College Football Playoff. But I'm going back on teams here. Florida State, pretty simple job. All you have to do is win out and you're in. There is not one tried and true super difficult game, although you probably got to watch out for Miami, even though you get that game at home. And then this game against Florida right here, definitely going to be a very interesting one to keep an eye on as well. Let's move on to our second Big Ten team already. That is the Michigan Wolverines. They're sitting right now with a 50% chance to make the college football playoff. They're number 2 in ESPN's Football Power Index with a 23.6% chance to win out. Now, here's where things start to get a little interesting when you're talking about certain teams. Michigan has Purdue coming up this week. Now, it's Purdue. They haven't really looked very good. I expect I expect Michigan thoroughly to be able to win that game. I mean, they're favored right now by 32.5 points, but then it really starts to get interesting for this team. You have to go on the road to play Penn State. You have to go on the road to play Maryland, and I know the Terrapins are on a slide, but don't discount what Maryland can do. And then, of course, you have the game that I just talked about with Ohio State. May not matter if the Buckeyes win or lose that game. And again, there's a whole lot of controversy, a whole lot of things surrounding Michigan right now. That's not what this video is here to discuss. I recorded that last week. If you're going to go watch that video, please, I encourage you, go watch it. But Michigan is the first team on the board that we've seen that has 2 asterisk games. And I know that there are people right now, and part of the reason why Michigan is sitting at number 3 is who have they played? They haven't played anybody. Michigan's strength of record is not good. Their strength of schedule is not good. However, in terms of remaining schedule, they have one of the toughest remaining schedules in the entire country. It's especially going to get a huge boost if you're able to go on the road in Happy Valley and beat Penn State. Again, a win over a respectable Maryland team, especially on the road, is going to boost that resume as well. And then, of course, the win over Ohio State will just seal the deal. Michigan has still got a lot of very, very tricky games here. But again, it is this 3-game stretch that I think a lot of Big Ten fans and Michigan fans have been talking about for quite some time. That is the stretch that's going to decide this Michigan team. If they go on the road and lose to Penn State, there's going to be some question marks and some conversations to be had about Michigan football. But let's move on to the number 4 team here in terms of chance to make the college football playoff. Sitting with a 41% chance is the AP polls number 1 team, the College Football Playoff Committee's number 2, and the reigning back-to-back national champion Georgia Bulldogs with a 20% chance to win out. Now, you may think, well, 20% chance, that, again, numbers according to the FBI, that seems a little bit low, right? Especially for the back-to-back. Well, wait until you look at this schedule, right? So, I mean, you can just take a look there. You have 3 asterisks here, and you have to play 2 teams that are on this board in back-to-back weeks. So the Missouri Tigers are up next for Georgia. They are a huge double-digit favorite there at home against the Missouri Tigers, but the Tigers are sneaky. The Tigers can sneak up on you. Georgia cannot take that game lightly. You also have this game right here against the Ole Miss Rebels, who, again, right here on this board. And you have the game against Tennessee coming up. Then you also have to go on the road to play Georgia Tech. That Tennessee game is in Neyland Stadium on the road as well. Same conversation that people are having with Michigan, they're having with Georgia. They're asking, well, who have they played? They haven't really played anyone super notable. I mean, you take a look at these 3 games here, and no matter your opinion of Georgia Tech, which, by the way, has a pretty solid football team, it has a couple really big marquee wins, especially the one over North Carolina. You take a look at these 3 games right here. If that is not a resume builder, I don't know what is. Georgia has one of the hardest remaining schedules in the country as well because of these 3 games. Now, granted, you do get these 2 games right here Missouri and Ole Miss at home. Tennessee, of course, you have to go on the road, but Tennessee is a team that's not on this board. They've been more inconsistent than what Mississippi and Missouri have shown so far this year. So when you take a look at this Georgia schedule, I mean, you have some really good wins here. You do have a win against Kentucky. You do have a win in a neutral site against Florida. But again, there is a lot of conversation. Well, you had to come back to beat Auburn. You had to come back to beat South Carolina. Your offensive line struggled against UT Martin. If Georgia can win these 3 games, look, so if Georgia's able to win this game here, you're probably in the SEC championship game. If you can win these 3 games right here, oh boy, that may propel Georgia back up to the number 1 spot and likely into the college football playoff. But the resume, especially for these 2 teams right here, that a lot of people for a lot of the season have had number 1 and number 2, currently reside at 2 and 3. Your resume is about to get padded a whole lot better than what it currently stands right now. Let's move on here. So we kind of have your clear 4, and then there's a bit of a drop-off before we get to the Alabama Crimson Tide. A 24% chance to win out. Still a lot of interesting games coming up for them, but none bigger than the one this week against the LSU Tigers. And you'll see another team on the board here, even though they have 2 losses. We're going to talk about that when we get there, but LSU currently resides as a team on this, or I should say on this board. They are a ranked team. They are a very, very tough opponent to play. If Alabama gets that win, you also likely clinch your shot at getting into the SEC championship game, something that we know the Ole Miss Rebels do not want to see happen. But Ole Miss likely needs 2 losses here out of Alabama, and then you need LSU to trip up as well. Again, we'll talk about that when we get there. But talking about the Alabama Crimson Tide, what do they need to do? Well, obviously they need to win out. You got the LSU Tigers, and then you have some games that don't have asterisks on them, but still are games that you have to watch out for. The Kentucky Wildcats, the Chattanooga Mocs, which you're going to be able to win that game easily, and then Auburn. You got to watch out for Auburn. You got to watch out for Kentucky there. Those are 2 games that can trip you up here, but of course the big one is this week against the LSU Tigers. You win that one, you likely solidify your shot to get into the SEC championship. However, when you take a look at the rest of the schedule here, Alabama's already got 1 loss. You cannot slip up. He cannot slip up. Speaking of teams that already have 1 loss, you got a couple of them up here next. Oregon and Oklahoma are tied at 28% chance to get into the college football playoff. Oregon has a 39.3% chance to win out. You likely will beat Cal this week. Probably not going to be a hard game here for Oregon, although it would be a very Oregon thing to do to be able to drop that game, even though you do play that game there at home. But moving forward here, and you take a look at what else is on the schedule for this Duck team, you do have to play USC. Now, you do get the USC Trojans at home, currently a team that the College Football Playoff Committee has ranked, and the opinions on USC, you can kind of sway one way or another on what you think USC is made of. Really, really good offense, really, really poor defense out of the USC Trojans. You have to go on the road and play Arizona State, and then you get a home game against Oregon State. So what it's looking like for Oregon right now is, yes, you do have some tougher games on the schedule, especially with USC and Oregon State right here. However, this is a team that has those 2 tough games at home, and that likely leads up very, very well. And you're considering the brand of football that Oregon is playing right now. They're playing some of the best football out of anyone in the entire country. Likely will get into the Pac-12 championship game if you're able to take care of business there. Let's move on to a couple Big 12 teams. We got the Oklahoma Sooners here, 33.6% chance to win out according to the FPI. And really your toughest test here is coming up this week when you have the road game, Bedlam against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. The Cowboys are going to come out hungry. They are going to be looking to really prove something there and send their rival out of the conference with a loss, right? So when you take a look at this Oklahoma team, and look, the Big 12 conversation is very, very interesting because we are going to skip to Texas here, kind of group them together. 26% chance to make the college football playoff, and according to ESPN's FPI, you have a 21.9% chance to win out. You also only have 1 asterisk game on the schedule, at least as of right now, and that's the Kansas State Wildcats. That's coming up this week. Both of these games right here, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and then Texas and Kansas State, they both contain teams that are 4-1 in Big 12 conference play, and there is still a lot that can pan out in this Big 12 conference race. Of course, these two teams right here getting a win this week, and then you're also probably going to hope that Kansas beats Iowa State. That leaves these two teams as the only teams with one loss in the conference, and likely will meet on a collision course to meet yet again after that classic Red River game in the Big 12 championship. Let's look at what Oklahoma has elsewhere. West Virginia, they sit 3-2 in conference. You have BYU, and then you have TCU as well. For the Texas Longhorns, hey, you have TCU, but that is a road game. Definitely something to watch out for there. You have the Iowa State Cyclones, and you have the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Probably a little bit of a harder road for Texas, probably why their college football playoff percent chance is a little bit lower than what the Oklahoma Sooners see. But when you take a look at just these two teams here in the Big 12 Conference, I mean, obviously they're leaving for the SEC next year, but these are two teams that, look, have their most difficult game remaining on their schedule this week. If they can win that and you can win out, you avoid the upsets, likely will meet in the Big 12 championship game. Both, if they sit at 11-1, could provide a winner-take-all game to go to the college football playoff. You have the Washington Huskies down here who right now are currently undefeated, but sit behind Oregon, even though Washington has the head-to-head over Oregon. They're one of the only undefeated teams left in the country. ESPN FPI only gives them a 6.8% chance to win out, and it's because of this 3-game stretch right here. So you have to go on the road to play the USC Trojans. FPI really likes USC here to be able to win that game, and of course, being a road game for the Washington Huskies could provide some really, really interesting storylines here. Washington is favored. Washington is favored in Vegas. However, I believe I misspoke earlier when I said that USC was favored. USC is favored according to the FPI, though the FPI does like USC to win. But the difficult stretch for Washington does not stop there, because you have to play Utah. Granted, that is a home game. That's a team in Utah that's still struggling to find their offensive rhythm. But then you have to go on the road to play Oregon State. Now, I know Oregon State's sitting with 2 losses. You just lost to an Arizona team that, come on, let's be honest, deserves a little bit more respect than what they're currently getting right now. But this 3-game stretch here for Washington is very, very tricky, especially with the way that Washington has been playing as of late. You struggled to get by Arizona State. You struggled to get by Stanford. Those are the two of the bottom teams in the conference. And then, of course, last game of the season, you have the Apple Cup against Washington State. But this 3-game stretch right here, USC, Utah, and Oregon State, that is the interesting thing, right? That is the interesting stretch of games that Washington is going to have to go through here. If they can get through this one unscathed, that's going to make the college football playoff conversation very, very interesting, especially if Oregon is also able to get through unscathed here. I think chances being USC will probably take one of these 2 games, more than likely probably this game here against Washington, but that motivation factor plays in for USC, and that's a conversation for another video. Let's move on to the Penn State Nittany Lions, the only other team on this board that I haven't talked about yet that has a double-digit probability of getting into the college football playoff. They are sitting right there at 15%, likely because of that loss already to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're going to need some help. You have a 33.2% win chance to win out here. You do have a road game against Maryland that you have to watch out for. You have to watch out for. I know Maryland has been on a slide. Same conversation that I had up here. Maybe not as thoroughly as I should have, but sort of the similar conversation here. Maryland has Penn State and Michigan at home, and if you want to look at a team that's on this board that doesn't have an asterisk by them with multiple appearances here that can say, okay, what team can really go out and ruin the college football playoff conversation? It's Maryland. It is Maryland. It is also USC, but again, they have an asterisk next to them on the board. USC can really screw things up. Maryland can really screw things up. What happens if they beat Penn State? What happens if they beat Michigan? And then what happens if Penn State beats Michigan? Obviously, Michigan's out then. Then what if Michigan beats Ohio State? There's this whole little merry-go-round that can happen. But Maryland is a team that you have to watch out for because they can really spoil things here for Penn State and for Michigan as well. So watch out for Maryland if you are Penn State. Of course, they have the big one against Michigan. You're able to win that. I mean, you put yourself in pretty good position here, especially if Michigan is able to beat Ohio State. You're just rooting on your counterparts in the Big Ten West. If there is a three-way tie within the Big Ten, it goes to the record of the teams that you played from the West. The best overall combined record will be sent to the Big Ten championship game, at least the way I understand it. You do have the game against Rutgers, which, again, you got to watch out. Rutgers can be a sneaky team, and then a pretty easy win at the end of the year there against Michigan State, all things considered, with the way that program is performing up to this moment. So now we're getting into the single-digit realm, and these are some teams that, look, Penn State is definitely going to need help. I would kind of draw the line right here, right? So any team above my hand here, I think controls their own destiny to get into the college football playoff. Any team that's below this line here, definitely going to need some help to try to get into the college football playoff. Penn State controls their own destiny more than these four, but these four teams right here, they're going to need some help to get into the college football playoff. For one, Mississippi still only sits with one loss. So the Ole Miss Rebels, if you are able to win out here, you're just going to kind of need some help. You're likely going to need LSU to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide. You're likely going to need some other things to have happen there in terms of chaos within the SEC West. But what Ole Miss can control is winning the remainder of their games. A lot easier said than done. This Texas A&M game coming up, I know it is a home game, but you need to watch out for the Aggies. The Aggies, like the Maryland Terrapins, are a team that appears multiple times on this board. You see them right there playing the LSU Tigers that really could screw some things up and really could mess up the college football playoff, or I guess kind of play the role that South Carolina did last year and clean up the college football playoff conversation. But anyway you slice it, Ole Miss has to play Texas A&M, and then you have that game there against Georgia, which is going to be a phenomenal matchup. You have to go on the road to play in Athens, Georgia, in Sanford Stadium. Look, if you walk away with a win there in that game, Ole Miss is in the college football playoff conversation, probably no matter whether they make it to Atlanta or not. If you win that game against Georgia, I mean, looking at these last, so if you're able to get past your opponents these next 2 weeks here, if you are the Ole Miss Rebels and you're able to beat the Aggies and you're able to go on the road and pull off a stunner in Athens, you're going to beat University of Louisiana Monroe, all things considered, and you're also probably going to be able to beat the Mississippi State Bulldogs, all things considered as well. So it's really about these next 2 weeks for the Ole Miss Rebels. You get the job done. You're in the college football playoff conversation, and it's going to help if some chaos happens within the SEC West for you to get to Atlanta in the SEC championship game. LSU, they're going to need a lot of chaos. They're the only two-loss team on this board, yet they do have a 5% chance to make the college football playoff. And according to ESPN's FBI, 12.4% chance to win out. By the way, Ole Miss, a 14.3% chance to win out there, likely hinging on that game against Georgia. But back to the LSU Tigers, if you're able to get past the Alabama Crimson Tide here, you have Florida, which, again, don't sleep on Florida, right? That is going to be a tricky game, even though LSU gets them at home. Then you have Georgia State, and then you have Texas A&M right there as well. And Texas A&M is going to be no sleeper either, even though, again, you still have that game at home. So going on the road against the Alabama Crimson Tide, that's the big one that a lot of Tiger fans are looking at right now. But then you still have to play Florida. You still have Texas A&M. Granted, both those games are at home. But LSU is the team here that's on this board that's going to need a lot of chaos. And I mean a lot of chaos. I'm talking about a butt ton of chaos. We're talking like some of the teams up here need to lose like 2 or 3 games. There just needs to be absolute mass catastrophe that happens here in November of college football. Granted, they still are in the college football playoff conversation because there is still a path for them to get to Atlanta. Still is a path for them to win the SEC. Kind of hard to deny an SEC champ too, right? Even though the SEC may appear as a little bit of a weaker conference than at least when you compare to how the conference has played out in years past. But LSU's the team that's still on the board, still has a chance. You need a lot of chaos, though. Louisville. Hey, the Louisville Cardinals are sitting up here. They only have 1 loss, only 5.5% chance to win out, though, and only a 1% chance to make the college football playoff. So let's sort of break this down as well. The resume is not going to be the greatest for Louisville because, so here's why Louisville is where they are. The schedule set up very nicely for the Cardinals this year. You did not have to play North Carolina. You did not have to play Florida State. And you get Miami late in the year. And I believe that you get that game at, nope, my apologies. You do get that game in Hard Rock Stadium. But Miami's the team that has not really played up to standard this year. I mean, Virginia Tech, that's a sneaky game. That's a game that, hey, look, you go out and look. That's a game right there that's going to decide who takes over second place in the ACC. Can't fall asleep there. Virginia is one of the worst teams in Power 5, and then you have Kentucky at the end of the year, which is also going to be a very, very interesting game to watch. You do get that game at home, though, against the Kentucky Wildcats, who ever since starting out at 5-0 have been on a little bit of a slide here. But the resume for Louisville is not really going to compare to some of these other teams. So maybe even if you win out and you win the ACC, you still might need a little bit of chaos there with Louisville. However, you win out, you take care of business, you put yourself in a very good shot, even though that number right there only says 1%. And speaking of 1%, Missouri was actually nowhere to be found on the college football playoff committee's list of teams that can go make the playoff. In fact, Missouri's only given a what is this here? To make the college football playoff, a 0.6% chance to do so, and a 0.6% chance to win out. So not a lot of people believing in the Missouri Tigers right now. Look, if you have not watched college football this year, you're kind of tuning in now because this is when games really start to matter a whole lot more. Not that they haven't mattered in the past, it's just the stakes are a lot higher now. Missouri is a team that you need to look at and say this is a legit team. I know, but Missouri is legit. You have a lot of very, very good weapons. The defense plays really, really well at times. And look, the schedule in the past may not have been super difficult. You do have a good win over Kansas State, and your only loss of the year is against LSU, who, hey, that's a team on the board. And you got two other teams here, one of which is on the board. That's the Georgia Bulldogs coming up this week. If you're able to win that game on the road in Athens, I mean, this number is going to shoot up the board very, very fast because you're likely going to be, okay, I don't think you're going to end up being favored here in the game against Tennessee. However, you do get that game at home. So if you're able to get past what's going to be your toughest test of the year in Sanford Stadium against the Georgia Bulldogs, I mean, sky's the limit for what this Missouri team can do. If you want to dive into teams that are talking about who is going to be this year's TCU, you can look at the Louisville Cardinals and you can look at the Missouri Tigers. Both of these two teams, if they take care of business, if they pull off some upsets, if they shock the college football, Louisville doesn't have to really pull off an upset until the ACC championship game, likely when they play this team right here, the Florida State Seminoles. But if you are the Missouri Tigers and you pull off some upsets, you pull out some stunners, especially if one happens this weekend in Sanford Stadium, you set yourself up in a great way for success. Again, you still have to play Tennessee, Florida, and then the game at the end of the year against an Arkansas team that has just not been able to put it together and pull out some wins here in the late stages of the season. So there we go. We've talked about every team. We've talked about their remaining schedule. We're going to get into some college football playoff the sort of scenarios the farther down the line we go, maybe with 2 or 1 week left. One of my Fun Video Fridays here will be going through some different scenarios on how teams can make the college football playoff. But I mean, take a look at this list right now. Take a good look here at the way that the schedule shakes up for all of these teams because, guys, I mean, really any way you slice it, I mean, you take a look at anything you want to on this board. This is going to be a very interesting month of college football, to say the least. I mean, I can't remember a season where there were really this many big games on the slate in November. I mean, it's going to be something that's really, really fun to watch. Now, if you want to have a couple of conversations here, I've already had the one with who have they played, right, with between Michigan and Georgia. The resume is going to get a whole lot better when you take a look at that. For Washington, maybe not one of the more comparable resumes, and they've been kind of slacking. You take care of business these next 3 weeks. You put yourself together in a really good shot. But this is where the interesting thing comes with this year. There is not one conference that is out of it yet. Now, look, could the Big 12 eat itself alive? Yes. Could the Pac-12 eat itself alive? Yes. There's even a scenario where the Big 10 kind of eats itself up there as well. Same thing with the SEC. But, I mean, you want to throw out a certain scenario this year, lay it out there. I think everything is on the table this year, especially when you take a look at just some of the games. I mean, just just look at the board. Some of the games that are going to be played are just absolutely phenomenal. You have a potential rematch in the Big 12 championship game here, potential rematch in the Pac-12 championship game here. These two teams could face in Atlanta in the SEC title game. We're guaranteed a matchup between Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan and Penn State is a matchup that we're getting guaranteed. Ole Miss has to play Georgia. Missouri has to play Georgia. Tennessee is a team that can really shake things up here as they play both Georgia and Missouri. I mean, it's beautiful. College football is beautiful. College football is well alive, and we're going to find out a lot about a lot of teams here this week in the college football playoff conversation. Maybe we'll do some playoff eliminator type videos, or we'll kind of preface that here in my Wednesday videos when I predict who I have currently making the college football playoff. But we're almost at half an hour, which is exactly where I want this video to be. Thank you guys for hanging with me if you were able to watch the entire thing. If not, hey, totally get it. If you just wanted to look at that here, I'll give you guys a nice little look at it. But thank you so much for your support on the channel. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for everything you guys do for this channel. If you want to do more, again, subscribe, like, comment, continue to watch my videos wherever you guys want to do. But I'm signing off for now. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Enjoy your college football Saturday. Goodbye.